Hey guys, so we're going to be going over your first lesson here in AVC 100. So before we jump into the digital aspect of the course, which you'll be working in a lot of the Adobe products, I wanted to go through a little bit of basic design with you guys, talk about the principles and the basic elements of design, as well as a little bit about color theory here, because you're not required to be an artist for this course. I understand that some students in this class aren't necessarily majoring in digital arts or in an art program here at Glendale Community College, but we highly encourage you to put your best and strongest foot forward. And I want to give you guys all of the tools in order to make successful projects within this course. Like I said before, we're really building on trying to prepare you guys for other courses within the digital program. And if not, this helps to prepare you. If you're not going into that, it helps to prepare you for other things that you might do. Who knows if you're going into marketing or advertisement or something like that, having a base idea of what kind of things go into creating digital elements is really important. So the first thing that I'm going to publish here for you to talk about here, when you go to your modules, you will see, here, let's go into your student view. I have, first of all, let's kind of move these down. These are not your, you are not going to see all of these just quite yet. Right now, you're only going to see the ones that are published. I did make some changes here because I'm trying to like reorganize this course. The department and I, along with other instructors and the department chair, are working to make this class cohesive amongst other instructors. And so right now I'm fleshing out some organizational properties within the modules. So if they might change a little bit, I'll let you know if they do. Like I said in the syllabus, I'll always let you know if I make any kind of changes like this to the course. But it's essentially the same thing, right? We have the course introduction. I put this in here where you had your intro video, your introductory assignment, and like the YouTube and intro to me, essentially, in the class. Student success is going to be where I will post maybe videos or information that I think could make you successful, not only in this course, but in other online settings or remote settings or working within like any kind of coursework, what's going to set you up for success and stuff like that. I'll probably be filming a video tomorrow regarding that or later today. And then your class projects are going to be here. Right now, you don't have all of the projects. I mean, you're not going to be seeing all of these quite yet. They might change, but currently we are going to be talking about this project right here, color theory and color palettes and the building blocks and principles of design. That's what I'm going to go over right now. These are online participation questions. I will be posting them as well. And these, again, are how I take attendance. And then finally, any kind of quizzes or anything like here, I will be putting right down here in the lesson quizzes. I don't always have quizzes. If I do, they're very short. So there is that. So let's go through your first assignment and talking about the basics of design and like the building blocks of design. I'm going to start by opening this page where I give you some information about color theory and color palettes. Color in the design world is something that people specifically work on, primarily in like animation and video editing. There are colorists, people who specifically work just with coloring. But it's really good to have these skills anyways, like when you're building any kind of design, understanding color theory and how color can have psychological impacts and emotional impacts on the viewer is really important. So I placed a video down here that's going to talk to you about the different terminology. You're going to have primary colors, secondary colors, so on and so forth. There's different types of colors 4 different formats, right? Like color profiles. So you have, for instance, when you're doing traditional art, you're using your primary colors, which are red, blue, and yellow, right? When you mix those paints, like when you mix blue and yellow, you're going to get green when it comes to painting and artwork as far as like physical work. Now, that's different when it comes to working in the digital realm. When you're working with video and animation, you're going to probably use RGB, which is red, green, blue, and that has to do with how the lights on your computer work together and mix to create a color. Now, if you're doing things for print, there is specific color profiles for that called CMYK. C is cyan, Y is yellow, M is magenta, and K is for black. And we'll talk about this here. That's going to be primarily used for like print. So that's how the computer creates a profile. You work in that profile, and you create something that's going to go to print. So it's, I mean, the difference when you're looking at something made for the web or for a screen versus what you're making for print might be sometimes it's a big difference when you're looking at them side by side in a file, and like if you have an RGB, an image that you've created and the profile of it is RGB, that's going to look different than the one that you create, which is CMYK. And it has to do with how the inks in the printer mix. So there's a lot of information. I'll go more into depth onto those and what you're going to use for this course later. You're likely not going to be printing things. We're mostly going to be working in RGB because it's going to be digital format, but I want you guys to know this information because it's important. So definitely watch this video. It's very short, I think maybe 5 to 10 minutes long. And then I also posted some color palette generator websites here. Now, like I said, it's an in-depth process. There's a lot of psychology and ideas and stuff that go behind why to pick certain colors for certain images or illustrations, you know, based on mood, tone, all that kind of stuff. And for this course, what I want you guys to do is more work within the color palette generators here, because you are going to get more of a solid, cohesive color palette than if you're trying to pick them on your own. Picking color palettes on your own can be difficult, very, very difficult. Like I said, it's a lot of work that goes into it. So for time's sake and for this course, please use these websites below. There's a couple that I like to use. I primarily use Coolors here. If I open up Coolors and we look here into it, let me just check to make sure. I believe that, yes, we are seeing this. Sorry, my OBS, you know, it's got that infinite ether thing that happens. So I just want to make sure that we were getting this page, the websites actually on here as well. When I open up the Coolors link, you're going to see this. You don't have to sign up for Pro. You can sign in and create an account if you want to. It will give you a limited amount of saves in here. But usually what I like to do is just start the generator. I click that there. And it's going to give you 5 colors. And you can just hit your space bar and it will go through those colors. Now let's say I liked this particular it's called International Climb Blue. Let's say I like that one and I want to keep that but change the rest of the palette. I will just go over here. If you hover over the colors, you will see that there's a little toggle lock. Also, it shows you the shortcuts. You can lock that color and hit spacebar and continue to change the rest. Now, like I said, I suggest using just kind of default with it, what it's going to give you. But there's different, it gives you the code, which is called a hex code, which is a way for computers to basically share the same information when it comes to a color. And you guys can also, you can either copy that hex code, you can drag and move it over to see like how that one specific color looks against other colors. You can also view different shades. So if you're like, oh, I like this color palette, but I want a little bit more contrast, which we're going to talk about today, you can go in there and you can change your values over here. And it will also change that information. Once you've found a color palette that you like, you can also, I believe you can, by the way, change how many colors are in here. Let's see here. adjust the palette. Oh, you can, I actually, this is really cool. And I'm fortunate enough to not have to use this, but there are a lot of students who come in who have who are colorblind. And because of that, you can select the color blindness option here, which allows you to select which type of color blindness you have, and then it will show you them based on that. So that's really cool there too. You can check the contrast only if you have Pro. I don't know if visualizing the colors is cool. You can click on that and it'll show you what the colors look like as illustrations. You can see what it's like for the mobile, for branding. This is why I really, really love this, this generator in this website right here. You know, there's a lot of different options here when it comes to that, different patterns, typography, things like that. You can close out of there. Once you have your palette picked, you'll just go up here to export and you will click on that button and you can save it as this is an Adobe. The ASC profile is going to be for specific Adobe programs. You can save it like that, but then you have to import it into your software. I would suggest saving it as an image, and you can title it, and you can do the color space here, like if you want to do RGB, CMYK, hex colors, usually what we work in. I'll go over those a little bit more. HSL, hue saturation, luminous, which is like how bright things are. Then there's HSB, which stands for hue, saturation, and brightness. You will learn what all of those terms mean when you go here, and you watch the color theory video. And you can label the colors, like if you want to. I guess maybe it's only Pro. If it has this little thing here, it's only Pro options. So, you know, you could save it as an SVG, which is a file format that I will be going into later. So cool one here. This is my favorite one. I would export them as just an image at the moment, and then you can bring the image in to your projects and use a color picker to decide what you want to do. Again, a lot of this terminology might be foreign to some of you guys, so you'll learn as we go more of what I'm saying when I say like vector format or file format or different things like that. And I will show you guys how to import color palettes into these softwares as well. So I'm going to close this one out. Another one here is the Adobe Color Palette Generator. This one works a little bit more with different color harmonies that you're looking for. So like, let's say you want to, if you look over in this upper left corner, you want to go for a triadic color harmony, you can click there. You can drag these around and change like your main hue if you want to. You can change like the essentially saturation here on the what do I want to call this, like the color picker, the generator thing here. You can do an analogous color wheel, which, like, you know, this keeps them there. This is your main hue there. You can drag these out and you change them a little bit more like this. Now, when you're ready for this one, like when you're ready and you've gotten your colors picked out, you don't have to use all these colors. You can remove a swatch if you want to here. You know, you have these, let's say this is the color palette that I want. If I go up here over to the download as a JPEG, I can do so. And then I can just save it to my computer. You can name the color theme. Since you guys have access to Adobe, the Adobe Suite as a student, you can actually save your color themes into a library. So if you wanted to do that, which is on the Adobe website, where you'll have to be signed in there, but let me see, this is same account. And you can collect your library that you want to put it into and save it that way. I still prefer just doing an image. If I bring that up here, you'll see that it gives you the data along with the colors. So it gives you the hex value and also the RGB value on here as well. So that's really cool. It just doesn't give you names or anything if they were named. but Adobe does not do that. You can extract a theme from like images if you want to. You can extract gradients if you want to do that. So there's a lot of different options with this website as well. You can explore different themes like color themes and stuff that you wanted to look at. Like right now, obviously, this is like a kind of like a teal, like a dark teal, dark foresty color, building your color palette. You can pick neutral palettes, primary colors, so on and so forth. Trending color palettes will be here as well. From like different industries it's saying. So here's a fashion industry, graphic design industry, so on and so forth. Illustrations, UI, UX, which is user interface or user experience when navigating websites. The lab, I have not done this one yet, but it looks like you can drop your vector artwork, which I'll describe to you guys when we start talking about the software. But you can drop like certain things there, and then here's your libraries where you can have them saved. So a couple different options for you for color generators. You should be able to get along just fine with those. And with that being said, I will publish this page right now so that you guys can start reading that. Now let's move on to the building blocks of design and the principles of design. Okay. There are basic guidelines and basic rules when it comes to designing anything, right? Whether it's like an illustration, even when it comes to photography, and you're looking to have like a scene that you want to photograph, right? There's a lot of different things that come into play that you learn to look for when you're looking at like some kind of design or some kind of imagery. There's basic building blocks when we look at design. Those aren't necessarily the principles of design, but this is what makes up design, right? So a line, which is just a general mark. Let me actually open this up so we can look at, maybe I can do, I'll open Illustrator here. And this way I can maybe show you guys a little bit. I'll like work between here and also within, we'll do a letter size, the internet to kind of describe what these things are to you. So the first one is a line, right? A mark with length and direction used to create structure, and it guides the eye. That's basically what it is. Lines can be curved, they can be straight, and very directional to the point. They can create icons or symbols. Lines, like it says here, it starts from point A and it goes to point B, B, A, starting, ending point. A line can go off the page. Here you're just seeing like essentially what my basic, like a basic page. Think of this as like a piece of paper, right? And so lines, you see a lot of illustrations and stuff with line work. Let's see. Line work illustrations. Here we go. Hatching, cross-hatching is the use of lines and the closeness of the lines to create form and density and value in an image. So when you're seeing something like, this one's terrifying looking. Art is art. So when we're looking at this one, the pattern here, it's a beautiful illustration here. And the closer you see these lines as they start to get closer together, they create, when you're looking at it from further back, there's less white space in between, so it looks darker in those areas. So it's when you use line and the proximity of the line to each other, you can get different values. This is, you know, the basics of drawing, the basics of any kind of illustration or anything like that. Shape. What is shape? Shape's a two-dimensional enclosed area defined by lines or by colors. So if we get back into Adobe Illustrator here and I delete this, I can have a square here. And this square is defined by lines, right? 4 lines equal that. Let me see if I can make this stroke a little bit bigger so you guys can see that. Or it can be defined by a color. So move that over. My fingers are on the wrong spot in the keyboard. There we go. Right? So what if we filled that color in? You still see a shape. It's two-dimensional, it's flat. You have two different kinds of shapes. Here is what we would call a geometric shape, right? Geometric shape. A circle is a geometric shape, even an oval is a geometric shape. Polygons, geometric shapes, even stars are geometric shapes. The other kind of shapes that we have, what are the other ones? Organic shapes. Organic shapes are going to be things like hearts. Sorry, it's a terrible heart. I'm drawing with a mouse. Bear with me. Maybe like some kind of blob like this. It's still a shape. A bean shape. It's more like a weird zucchini or something like that. But you know, there are oftentimes, here's another one, like a flower, maybe like, wow. I'm laughing at myself right now because that's terrible. These are terrible. I haven't drawn with a mouse in a very long time, but these, usually very curved, very flowing. Those are what organic shapes are versus geometric shapes, which are geometrical, trapezoids, things of the sort like that. Color, a hue that can add emotion, emphasis, and visual appeal. Again, you will be learning about that when you watch the color theory video. Texture, the surface quality of an object, either real or implied. Real texture would be looking at an image. Let me see. Actually, let me go to Adobe Stock. We can get some good stuff off of there. You guys actually have access to Adobe Stock as well. Unlimited, I think, images and vector files, which I'll show you. We'll get more into those during our next couple of projects. But this is a really good resource to go to in order to find like inspiration or assets and things of that. So let's look up texture, and we can talk about two different kinds of texture. So I see texture all over this page right now. First of all, these are all implied textures, right? We kind of have like this grainy look to it, almost like a wrinkled piece of paper. Noise is what this kind of texture is called. You'll see this over a lot of film and video added in, especially like older films and video will have natural grain to the film that it was used for. So you've got, these are going to be like implied textures. You're going to find a lot of grains, like wood grain, kind of like a brick. This would be a, what was it called? A real texture. I was like implied, not implied, but this is real texture, right? Looking at brickwork, that's a texture of there. It's a pattern. Looking at here, look at, let's see here. Grass, fur, right? Images of textures that you can have here. Let's see. Grass, right? That's like a texture. You can, if you can see it and you can feel it in your mind, that is what texture is. Form is a three-dimensional element with height, width, and depth. Now, form can be implied or it can be real as well, right? Like if you see an image here, it's a great example right away. This golf ball, it is a sphere, right? It is a real, it is like a real form. My brain's a little bit wonky today. But the form of this is as actual, right? You maybe have form can be real in in like, what do I want to say, like sculptures, take on forms, so on and so forth. But there's implied form too. So that's like taking maybe a two-dimensional object and creating like this here. And if we were to, let's see here. I don't want to gray a symbol. But if we were to, let's see here, I can do this. I'm going to change the color of this ball. We're going to turn it into a ball, right? Maybe it is this color. And this, we're going to fill in, but we're going to change it to this color. And I'm going to take another one of these, copy it, scale it down really small, put it right up here, and change it to a much lighter color. And now if I were to take this object and remove some of this stuff on the outside, we will have, oh, do this again, select that. Delete that. We now have a sphere. So this went from just a circle, two-dimensional object to something that has form, right? I would obviously feather the shadow out. It's a very hard shadow and a hard highlight on here, but you understand that if you add certain shading and textures and stuff to a two-dimensional object in a digital format, or even on like in artwork, you can create form by adding shadows and highlights. Let's look at the next one. Space is the area around and between elements, also known as white space. We are going to talk about that a little bit more here, but it's not like, yeah, I'm going to space. Space would be, let me see here. Let's look up a logo. Internet, do your job. Okay, great. This one works too. The space in between and around, right? So there's space around this logo. There's space, white space, negative space in between. These objects almost looks like some kind of knots that are tied together, right? So that is exactly what space means, is space around whatever it is that you have. Value in tone is the lightness or darkness of a color or shade. So the value in tone of an image, like if we were to look at here, this is like a peachy pink hue. The value of this is a lighter value, so it's going to be lighter and maybe not a little less saturated than like a bright pink. It's going to be less saturated. The value of it would be like the brightness of it on a scale from like completely black to completely white. So it's got a higher value point here. Now, when we look at, so these are the basic elements of what creates a design, right? We usually have to have a few of these, and you can combine them to create illustrations and imagery. Like when we were looking at the illustration where they used lines that were closer to create value, to create tone, right? So the principles of design are what we're going to use moving forward in this course to create illustrations and projects that are cohesive and look good and aren't just a bunch of stuff thrown onto paper, because there is a thought process and there's planning behind it. I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit next week about planning projects and doing like sketch work before you go ahead and just start working. It's almost like a web, like doing a writing web before you're going to create a paper or write an essay, and you put down, okay, these are my base ideas. Let's fill in some little details in there. And so you use those sketches to essentially implement the principles of design on your, like in a very basic form, using like just shapes and very rough kind of sketches. And once you find one that works and you're like, oh, this design works, it uses several of the principles of design, and it looks good, right? Once you get that down is then when you can move to the actual like sketching and drawing process and like finalizing things. That is how you use that within, any kind of art-based career, art-based project that you're going to do usually starts off with planning, right? Pre-planning with some kind of sketching. It's not, you don't usually just see people, like on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, you see people just doing the base. Like they've already had it planned out. You just don't see that planning work behind the scenes because that can be a little bit more, it's not as exciting, it takes a lot of like fleshing things out and you're like, well, this doesn't work here, this works here. It's like kind of seeing all the pieces of the puzzle in a pile on the table and you're like, okay, well, let me sort these out from like corners and edges and so on and so forth. And so we'll use that. It doesn't, like I said, you guys don't have to be artists to be able to do that. A lot of sketching is just like very basic, just kind of scribbling and stuff on a page, just to kind of get the ideas out, get the ideas flowing. And so I kind of want you guys to do that for this assignment. Now, we're going to go over the principles of design here. I've created a PDF, which I'm going to open up. Let me see here. I can open up separately. And we are going to go through them. You can download this if you click that right there so that you can remember what they are. What was this? All right. Let me open this up and I am going to, sorry, I've been getting eaten up by mosquitoes and stuff outside. October in Arizona, right? Should be comfy and cold. I want the fall of like out east and stuff. I'm going to do that there, move that here so we can kind of look at these in the same way. I apologize. My computer is working kind of hard right now. It's a little warm, so the fan's going off. It's loud. And because of this, I am going to shut off my, let me go here and shut off my camera so that you guys can see. It was using this one, right? Let's see here. Okay, see that? Do I see this? I'm trying to see. Cool. Let me shut my webcam off here. All right. So I've created just some instances here for you guys to look at to go along with the guidelines and rules that I have written here as well. So the first one is going to be balance, right? The arrangement of elements to create equal visual weight. When it comes to symmetrical balance, everything is mirrored, right? It's exactly the same on one side as it is on the other, whether it goes from left to right, whether it goes from top to bottom, whether it's in like some kind of star shape, because you can do, if I were to erase these, and I were to put a star on here, this, even though it has 5 points, which is an odd number, it is still symmetrical because if I were to take a ruler and cut it right down in half, the center of it, let's center this, it would be exactly the same on the left side as it would be on the right side, right? That is symmetrical balance, right? Look, that's symmetrical, all of that stuff. So this one is even still symmetrical if I were to turn it this way. So it can still have odd or even amount of things from one side to the other, but the point of it being is that it's equal. It's exactly the same on one side as it is on the other, right? So if I have an example here, just 2 circles. Both of them are like a dark purple. If I were to take this one and cut it in half and put one side dark purple, one side light purple, I better do it to the other one because that is symmetrical. If I didn't do it to the other one, it would be asymmetrical and the weight would be off, right? There's like something called a visual weight, and it's basically it's the ability, I want to fix this here. I don't know why it gave a number. But it's essentially like there's, how do I want to explain visual weight? Is how the balance looks throughout the image, right? So if everything's all shoved over to one side, it's going to look heavy on the other side, right? Like top heavy. So if we, great way to look at this is with two circles. And if I were to draw one large circle here, and I were to copy that, but then make this very small, right? Obviously, this circle looks bigger, it looks heavier than this circle right here, which is smaller and lighter looking. So visual weight has, you know, if I were to move both of these over to this side, it's very off balance, right? All the visual weight is over here. There are instances when you can do that, but we have to know the rules first before we decide to break the rules. So the opposite of that is going to be asymmetrical balance, right? The elements are different, but they're still balanced when it comes to visual weight. Now, what does this look like? If I scroll down here, we have asymmetrical balance, okay? We have a square over here, but then we have consecutive circles that create almost like this shape of the square on the outside, like an implied square happening here. And so it looks balanced on both sides. No, and it doesn't matter that the circles are smaller than the square and they're two different shapes. There still is cohesive balance here. Asymmetrical balance is going to be harder to reach in the beginning when learning about design than it is to do symmetrical balance, right? So, or if I were to take all of this and move it from one side like I did before, that would be asymmetrical balance as well. Contrast. Contrast is something you're also going to learn about in the color theory video. It's the degree of difference between two elements. Like it doesn't have to be necessarily color, right? When we think contrast, we do think color. We think shadows and highlights, light and dark. But it can also be with other things like roughness versus smoothness of something. Like let's say you have like a bowling ball, but then you also have a basketball, right? There's a contrast of difference between the smooth surface of a bowling ball, like the glassy, almost marbly surface of that, versus the rough and bumpy texture of a basketball. So that's kind of like contrast between textures. So when I bring this up here, we're going to do contrast of color. The most common, like I said, you have light against dark, or dark against light, and light against dark here. And then you should be able to easily tell the difference between objects, and that's how you know there's enough contrast. A lot of artists, what they will do in order to make sure that they have enough contrast within their illustrations is they'll actually sometimes either create them in grayscale, which means all blacks and grays, and then they'll turn those into color, because if they can look at it in grayscale and see that everything, all of their elements stand out enough to be legible, visually legible, then there's enough contrast in there. And if not, if everything looks like one gray image and washed out, then we're like, okay, we need to add contrast in here. So when learning to work with contrast within illustrations or designs, sometimes working in grayscale will really help that. It also, like contrast, sometimes colors, if they're of the same saturation or value, they will be hard to differentiate from each other. So if I were to have a dark blue hexagon here instead of a light purple one, it would be harder to see. There would be less contrast, and I would have to increase the contrast of that somehow. Next will be emphasis. Emphasis is creating a focal point to draw the viewer's attention. I have a very easy example right here, emphasis. We have all the same objects around here, and then one that is completely different that immediately draws your eye to it. It's emphasizing that object or that design, right? If I wanted to draw, you see a lot of this when you see text on illustrations or on posters or advertisements. You want to draw emphasis to the text first, because the text is what you want the viewer to see first. You want them to read what you have on screen or on a print. That's your main focus there, right? I mean, sometimes we all will catch ourselves looking at pictures instead of reading, right? There's some of us who like to do that, um, myself being one of them. But with that being said, you can still draw. You can emphasize designs without any text, right? And this is a great example of how to do that. The next one that we have lined up for you is hierarchy. Now, hierarchy is the arranging of elements to show their order of importance. Now, you see this a lot in magazines, right? You want people to read, or in newspapers, you want people to read the heading of the newspaper first, and then they read then you read the body of the article, and then maybe under the picture you're going to read the little caption under the photos last, right? And so you see hierarchies used all the time in different places. And right here, I show hierarchy with all the same shape, right? But to determine emphasis on what I want you guys to look at first, or what's important, most important, I make it big. I make it powerful looking, bold color, right? A big purple square, whereas then I want you guys to look over at these lighter, kind of like mid purpley range, smaller squares, and then finally your eye drops down here over to these the lightest little smallest squares. If I go back here, repetition is using the same elements to create a sense of unity, right? Where do we see this all the time? Patterns. So if I go here and we look here, we have repetition of patterns. This one usually is the most fun for people to do, but it just looks, it gives this cohesive look, and it brings everything together because we're repeating them over and over again. Proportion is the relationship between the size and scale of different elements within a composition. So what does that look like? We have proportion here. Also, so you guys know, this is, as you're looking at these, you're starting to notice how each one of these principles ties into the other. So usually you're hitting on more than one, right? Because this is asymmetrically balanced as far as like the size of them and the colors, right? We have a circle here where it's only outlined, and then we have a circle here that is filled in with a solid color. So there's asymmetrical symmetry here, but there's also like a symmetrical symmetry. If we were to draw a line down the center and look on both sides, they're exactly the same. I would say asymmetrical weight when it comes to this, but as far as proportion goes, this also works on proportion because it's relating the size or scale of each item to each other. We have alignment, lining up elements to create a clean, organized appearance. Again, you'll see this in magazines where they will have the heading, they'll have a body paragraph, and then maybe a subparagraph or something underneath that. So when I look at alignment here, though, everything is perfectly aligned with each other. Center, it's aligned in the center of the image. All these objects are aligned to each other as well. This also shows like a hierarchy, right? So if we wanted to look at this as the biggest one and down, you know, as it moves your eye down, but mostly focusing on alignment, like all of these objects are aligned to a center point. The if I wanted to add more hierarchy, I would probably change like colors and whatnot with that as well. Movement. I'm going to fix this here real quick. This is bugging me. Let's see down here. There we go. I'll publish this right now since we're almost done. Actually, let me unpublish it, but save it. Where were we at? Movement is guiding the viewer's eye through a design. It has nothing to do with movement like you would think, like animation or anything like that. It's actually guiding the eye through the composition, right? There's a rule that we call the rule of thirds, is where you have an image broken up into, you take in 3 sections, right? There's 1, 2, 3 columns, 3 rows. This isn't perfectly, I would obviously, if I were doing this for real, I would mathematically and like precisely put this up here, but how your eye, you see this a lot in like photography, right? You see this grid essentially is what it is. And what this grid does is you want to, the whole rule of this is it's up here because you want to place your main objects on one of these lines, right? Now, if it's in a conjoining line right here, it is in like the golden spot, right? These areas right here are going to be the spots where people are like going to draw to, their eye is going to look at directly. So when you're planning a design or an illustration or something and you want to draw emphasis to a specific thing, putting that item or that element in on one of these lines, right, is going to be one of the main ways to do that. Now your eye works its way down a composition, right? Starts usually from the top and works its way to the bottom. And so because of that, movement really helps. The principle of movement really helps with guiding the eye. So this is a great way to do so, right? So I've got this, it almost looks like it is moving from the back to the forth using multiple elements, multiple principles of design to help achieve that implied motion or movement to this element that I have here. And then finally, white space and negative space. That is the empty space around and between a design and element. Again, we spoke about this right here, but I also have an example right here that I have created for you where I took an organic shape like a heart and I had flipped it upside down. And then I cut out another shape, almost kind of like an arrow, out of that to create like a white space or negative space. You see a lot of this in logos. You see here, and it's very clever how people use that negative space. Logos are really cool. Let me see. Actually, let's look at some very well-known logos here, and they can be very clever. For instance, the FedEx logo, we have a small arrow using white space, using negative space right here. Maybe some of you didn't realize that, but it was a very intentional thing within the design. There's also the, what is this, CBS logo or NBC? The eye, using white negative space with a circle there to create an eye. I think it's the NBC, the peacock one. Yes, and just using negative space here, by cutting out this little notch and creating that there, you have a peacock there. Because if we were to look at a logo like this, I don't know why this logo my way, but this is not as clean. It looks very jumbled. It looks very amateur, I guess I would say. Versus here, there's a lot of thought going into it and a lot of the principles of design added into this logo here. So this was very intentional. It was very thought out and very planned, right? And so negative space can really do a lot. It can tell a story when it comes to your design. And you see this a lot in in logos that want to portray luxury and richness and that regal feeling, right? So you see a lot of that where it's less jumbled and there's different elements for different images and logos that bring a different feeling to it. But when you look at logos that are very minimalist, they will have a lot of negative space with them in between the elements. So what do I want you to do now? Let's go ahead and look at here. I'm going to go back to the assignment here. Due on the 5th of November, which is a week from, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days away. Perfect timing. That's great time. Where is the deliverables? I thought I had those on here. Basically, the deliverables are, I want you guys to pick 5 of the principles of design, and I want you to sketch them out on a piece of paper or if you have a tablet where you have like Procreate or something like that, or you have, let me close this out, any kind of like digital drawing program that you want to do that, you can use that as well. I will have the deliverables also reiterated at the bottom of the assignment. I'm not quite sure. I must have accidentally deleted that. Let me see here. I want to bring back on my camera. But I want you guys to create, let's see here. Let's see if I have it under my pages. Sometimes, yeah, here we go. And I also have to put that in there. Not quite sure what I did. Something dorky. Let's see. Let me edit this. Add in. It must have been when I had. Come on, buddy. I want to insert a line. Insert a line there. Oh. My brain is a little bit slower than I want it to be today. The deliverables, we'll underline this and also change the color to bring importance, right? Bring importance to this. I want you to pick 5 of the principles of design to recreate using pencil and paper. Use simple geometric or organic shapes to create a simple example of each principle that you have chosen. Now, remember, don't overcrowd your images, and sometimes less is more, right? If you're just putting a ton of circles and a ton of stuff on the page, there better be a reason for it, because sometimes adding more elements onto your design can really take away from it. It looks too cluttered. It looks too, I mean, maximalism is a thing, but right now with this, we want to focus on the principles of the design, and you're going to achieve that more with a little bit less. The drawings don't have to be perfect. Like I said, I understand no one is an artist here, and I don't expect you to draw perfect squares and perfect circles. But if you can, if you know how to do that, great. If you don't know how to do that, that's okay. They can all be on one page as long as they're easy to distinguish and labeled as well, right? So you can take a piece of printer paper or a piece of notebook paper, write down if you're using emphasis, to create something and you want to emphasize the design, you write emphasis, maybe draw like a square to block off that area so that I'm looking at that specific kind of like a scene. But finding a way to make sure that they're distinguished from one to the other so that I'm not like, what is happening on this page, right? Organizing the page is what I'm asking. Label the images on which principles that you're representing, right? Because some of these, like I said, they start to tie into each other. You can see how maybe one can also be another one, and so on and so forth. And so if you're, whatever one you're doing in specific, write that down, label that on which one you're doing. And then I want you to submit an image of your work onto Canvas here, right? You're going to submit it for 100 points. And then you're also going to submit it into the Discord chat, right? If you're drawing it on a paper, if you know how to scan it, or create like a scanned image, you can do that. If not, as long as you take a nice clear photo with your cell phone with enough lighting, make sure that it's lit appropriately. That's going to be sufficient for this assignment. Let me actually insert that document so I do not forget. All right, here we go. I'm going to save that. And then also, you can also create something using an art program if you have the ability and the know-how to do so. I like to use Procreate for all sorts of things in sketching now. I also really prefer just a pen and paper, pencil and paper, to just sketch down like very simple basic ideas, and then I'll bring that sketch into something like Procreate or Fresco, Adobe Fresco. Like if you guys have an iPad, or if you guys have a drawing tablet like a Cintiq or Wacom, or like there's a lot of off brands now that you can find online that have like little drawing tablets you can connect to your computer, which is really nice. So if you guys have the ability to do that, you can upload a JPEG image as well, just like a JPG format one. But if you're just basically, that's if you're comfortable with it. If you're not comfortable with it, I don't expect you to know how to use that software or do any digital work. But drawing on a piece of paper, I'm assuming you all know how to do that. So, um, if you have any issues for some reason or don't have the ability to do that, please send me a message over here in Canvas and I will respond to that as quickly as possible. And aside from that, I look forward to this class. I look forward to having fun with some of these projects that we're going to be doing. And we're starting off a little bit slower than I was anticipating, but we're going to ramp up the energy. And the next week, we're right around Wednesday is when I'm going to post another video with your next project as well. So I hope you guys have a good day, good Halloween. I know that it's Halloween time, so I'm sorry it kind of lands on here. But yeah, simple assignment, real easy first one for you guys. So excited to see your work.